home. All right. And kind of take a look. And my question for you is, which one of these, or more of one of these, which of these quotes about home sort of most resonates with you? Which your feeling or your ideas about what is home? And since we're such a huge group, just, jump in. Like, what do you think?
I'm just asking everybody to unmute because they were, I think, automatically unmute.
Yeah.
It's funny. These are a lot of really good statements about home, and none of them quite hit it home for me.
Right. What's missing?
Where I'm welcomed home.
Right.
So the people who are there treat me as though I am home. That to me is home.
Right. So it's not about place as much as it's about people.
For me.
Right. Okay.
I think number 10 kind of reflects that, the Talking Heads quote.
Yeah. How come?
I'm just thinking that if you think of home as not so much the actual space, but what's encompassed in the space, people, memories, smells, things that kind of ground you so you can be picked up and turned around, I'm assuming in a good way.
Right.
Maybe.
But for you also, then home isn't centered as much in place as it's centered in the people or what's there or what it means there for you.
Yeah, I think maybe, but I think also, I guess that quote resonates for me because of that definition of home. But I guess I also do think of home as a place, but maybe it's multiple places. Maybe it's not just like the place that you grew up. Maybe it's also a place where you spent significant amount of time in X decade of your life. Or maybe
Right.
Some people always view Israel as home because of their experiences there, even though they don't currently live there.
Right. So I want to kind of parse out a little bit the different variables of this, right? So there's the people, there's the sense of connection to either place or experience in that place or with those people, right? And also there's this question of can there be more than one, or is it just kind of like there is a home, or can you have multiple homes, or can home sort of change? Can it go from one place to becoming another place over time, right? There's the place that we grew up as kids that was home, and then for many of us, we as adults we've lived in some place and that's home, and and I was just at my parents' house and this past weekend, and I referred to it as going home, and then I left there to come home. So it's like how do we, right? So there's all these different pieces. I'm curious, like, do you? It's sort of like that. Yes, it can be all of those things, but like, I want to push. Like, what is it for you? Like, do you think? Yes, some people may think this, but what do you think? Like, for you, what's home, or who, or where, or what is that place that is the? Maybe there's like lots of places that feel like home, but that sort of, the most home-ish of the home.
You talked, Mason, about going to visit your parents. Right. And when you go to your parents, hopefully you've got the kind of relationship that you have with your parents.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's an embracement. So the coming home, kind of in the way that I was describing earlier, it was a feeling of belonging, of welcoming, of familiar. It kind of encompasses some of the things here, like it's where you can be who you are. You're kind of accepted to some extent that way. But there's also something which is roving about it because, your parents don't necessarily live in a physical place where you were raised. And yet if they move and you're going to visit them, you're still regarding as going home to them. You're going to visit your parents to some extent. So I don't know, there's a little bit of a roving Jew aspect to that, which I think is part of also how I think of home displaced from physical space. It's aspirational to find out, like something that you want to go, be, or something that you hope to look forward to. What's the one? Home is the place where you become yourself. There's something that's kind of aspirational about it, So it's both the place that's the familiar and the aspirational to me.
Wow. I like how you kind of broke all that down. Hi, Sarah. Welcome. What we're doing is we're looking at these various different quotes about the idea of home and trying to sort of parse and really sort of get into what is for us personally, like what is home. And we looked at a couple different categories. Is it about place? Is it about people? Is it about experience? Is it about, can there be more than one? Can it change over time? These are the different questions we're looking at about home, trying to sort of nail down on a personal level, not like what should everyone think about home, but what do I, or in this case you, think about what's home for you. And Jim was just sort of finishing on this idea that it's that I think is sort of going down that it's about people and also about this notion of how it is that we are regarded, the level of acceptance and openness that when we go to that place or with those people that we are at home. This notion of feeling of welcomed and sort of accepted as who we are. And right, Jim, did I characterize that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Certain amount of, I guess it speaks a little to what I was saying earlier in the Devar Torah. Like, there's something about stuff also. There's something about where our stuff is, and that stuff might be like physical stuff. It might be where memories have taken place, but there's got to be some stuff. My daughter came from college yesterday for vacation. For her, all the stuff is here, getting ready for a room. I don't have my parents' home anymore. I don't have my parents anymore. So, that's all memory stuff now. But now it is about where our stuff is.
Yeah, I think where our stuff is a big piece of that. And
the stuff thing's an interesting one, though, David, because look at the people in Ukraine right now, and it's kind of reminiscent of many places where life is transient and you have to leave your stuff.
With us,
so what happens? What happens to those people who have to leave all their stuff? Is there no longer a metaphorical home for those people? And I think Israel, to some extent, for us wandering Jews, represents that. It's, you don't have your stuff, you don't have your temple, you don't have the things that you feel secure in that are uniquely yours. And so you have to kind of, at some point, identify, those memories, as you said, but something else that ties you to the place that you feel home to, because the stuff may not be there.
Well, yeah. Mary Stone, you're a little very small on my screen. It's good to see you. All right, Mary, you're not the bashful one. What you got? Oh, you just muted yourself. Sorry. What are your thoughts about home?
My thoughts about home. It's funny because I was thinking about this the other day as well, just like David said. My daughter came home from school the other day for spring break, and this is where all her memories are, and I don't have a place to go back to like she does. But I do have those memories, and because we have the internet and we have digital media, I can have all of my memories, I guess, in video or photos, and I can take it with me. But it's those tactical things that you'll lose out on. But I don't know. As long as I have my memory, I think my home is still in my heart, where Israel is, where Tel Yehud is, Young Judea is, where my family is. It's, more of a internal, have to take it with you, just like those in the Ukraine have to. But digital media helps if you have, pictures and videos.
I appreciate that you also find the same different categories. There's sort of the how we feel in a certain place or with certain people, and then there's but they can all be sort of transferable, right? There's this idea, that wherever that feeling is for us, it can be in a certain location, but it also could be sort of transported or relocated, and it could be also that there's more than one of those places, right? I think that there's some kind of commonalities there. And also that this notion that when that place is not there, you almost are forced to sort of reconfigure what our feelings are about home, but maybe not because we have to, not necessarily because we're choosing to, right? We're sort of
because of circumstances,
right? But somehow we do, right? Like for most of us, we don't sort of just, once that sense of home that we have is no longer viable for whatever reason, we don't just sort of become homeless. Most of us, we sort of figure out a way to reconfigure and relocate that sense of home, maybe.
Right.
Right. Hi, Karen. It's nice to see you on. I want to get to the next piece, so we're going to move kind of past from these sort of different quotes about home, and I want to kind of look at one particular take on home from a poet, Leah Goldberg. So Leah Goldberg was this fascinating person. She was from Russia. Had this like crazy childhood where her father was like persecuted for being a alleged Bolshevik and was like moving around all over. She was actually from this little, I didn't even know this existed, this little tiny slice of Russia that exists that's not contiguous with, called Königsberg or Kaliningrad or something, that's in this little spot in the, it's magnified now because of all that's going on in Ukraine. So but she immigrated with her family to then Palestine in 1935. She after she finished her PhD in Berlin, moved to Palestine and later Israel in 1935, and she joined this group of Hebrew poets along with some of the big names, Bialik and others, that were essentially taking Russian poetic structures and applying it to Hebrew. They're like writing in Hebrew, but
Is it me or is it Mason?
I think it may be Mason.
Okay.
Definitely Mason.
Okay. Well,
she had this unrequited sort of like this unrequited kind of love for some student of hers that was never hey, how are you doing? And so, but one of the things that she did as a scholar was she translated all the great sort of Russian works like Tolstoy and others into Hebrew. And like one of my favorite things about all these kind of early Hebrew scholars is that she wrote children's books. They all wrote children's books. I think it's amazing, and also poetry. And so one of the poems that I want to look at is a poem that she wrote, and then it was later set to music by Achinoam Nini. And so we're going to look at both the sort of the poem and then also what Achinoam Nini did with it. Hey, Sabrina, what Achinoam Nini did with it to sort of add her own twist on it. In fact, we're going to just look at the Achinoam Nini song instead of the poem, and you'll kind of see what Achinoam Nini does with it. All right, so I'm going to play the song for you, which has been translated by my friend and teacher Robbie Gungrass in the video. So the English translations are there, so you can see it. Let me just share my screen here. And oh, whoops, I did that thing where I forgot to add the sound. All right, here we go.
ללשון השיר בארץ נוכריה. Well, I remember those snow-capped mountains and a song on FM 93. Oh my, שתי המולדות. איתכם אני נשתלתי במים, איתכם אני צמחתי אורנים ושורשיי בשני נופים שונים, שורשיי בשני נופים שונים.
All right. In the interest of time, we kind of got through the lyrics there. So what's fascinating about Achinoam Nini's take on this poem is that Leah Goldberg is writing this poem about, like, she's talking about Russia, right? She's talking about. I put the lyrics to the poem in the chat here. If you want to, you can kind of pull it up as the English, and then for those of you that have the facility, there's the Hebrew on the second page. But she's sort of longing for this, she's in Israel, right? Having had a pretty difficult experience in, Russia with her and her family. And she's sort of longing and missing the weather and the trees and that sort of feeling of home. And she's, she's talking about trees and about birds and about, this, they don't have snow-capped mountains in, not where she lived anyway, in Tel Aviv. And there's this line at the end where she says, the English is, in you I was transplanted, my pine I branched into myself and grew with my roots in two different landscapes. This idea that she didn't leave that sense of home behind in Russia, that she went to a new home and developed this new home there, but the roots were still in the other place too, and she's kind of got that tension between the two places. And then what I think is so amazing, so Achinoam Nini, who was born in Tel Aviv, her story is well known, right? Yemenite family. At the age of 2, she moved to New York and went to school here in Riverdale at CSAIR and then to Ramaz. And then at the age of 16, moved back to Israel and joined the army, did whatever, did her thing in Israel. And so she kind of takes this poem of Leah Goldberg talking about Russia and Israel, and then adds this other layer on it of this, of the public radio station in New York City, right? FM 90, like this, and adds this, like, in English, this other layer of these multi-layered ideas around home. And it's like this amazing midrash sort of, it's like taking, it's Goldberg is kind of talking about this thing and then she has this third layer on it. And so I'm sort of curious, like, if this adds any of the complexity to the conversation around home. Like, is it possible to have two homes? Or is home, like, there's always one that's like the real home, and then there's like the sub homes, right? Is it, Goldberg's suggesting that there's definitely a tension there, but, can they be equal? Or does it have to be, there's like there's the real home, and then there's like the Robert Frost home, the place that if you have to go there, they have to bring you in home.
Well, I actually, you just made me think. So I live in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where I grew up. And I went away for a while, and then I came back, and I kind of feel like I have two versions of home. Like, I live in Chapel Hill, and I have my adult experience, pre-kids through now, and then I have, my childhood, and I feel like they exist together. But sometimes I feel more like I'm in the Chapel Hill of growing up. Like, last night was big Carolina Duke game, and for those of you who follow basketball, it's a pretty big deal.
Big win.
So sort of, kind of get taken back to my childhood of, we're big UNC fans, just to clarify. So, I sort of feel like I got transported back into like the home of my growing up, but then I have my adult life here where I raise my kids. And my parents are still here, but they don't live in my childhood home. So I feel like I have these dualities in the same place. And I think of my home here in Chapel Hill as almost kind of like two different homes in some ways. I don't know. Just popped in my brain when you said that.
Yeah. Karen, I know you're along for the ride, but yeah, please.
Yeah, sorry. I'm in transit here, but I'm parked.
I'm glad you're with us.
Awesome. Nice to see everyone. Sorry I joined a few minutes late. I love Achinoam Nini, and it's so beautiful, and this connection. Thank you. Yeah, totally. I mean, I feel like I live on a dimension of multiple homes, even within my, like Miriam was saying, but like I moved back to Pittsburgh, but now I live in the suburbs, but I work in the city in a Reconstructionist religious school. And like, even within my home, I have multiple homes. Like I have my suburban community, and then like it's very multi-layered, and I still feel so connected to Israel. Like I listen to the Promise podcast now. You know, I know we have Noah Ephron coming on. I'm so excited. So like I
Don
just
Futterman.
and yeah, and I just like I feel like I definitely stay in tune to like is day-to-day Israel stuff, you know, more than many people I know, you know, that are not pulsing into that, you know, even though I'm not able to travel there as much as I would like. But
Right.
yeah, so yeah, it's just I didn't know this connection. It's so beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to point out. So Karen was my favorite madricha ever. She was my madricha when I was on Hadricha.
Say something about you as a camper, but you know you're not supposed to play favorites and all.
Yeah.
But
This is being recorded.
yeah.
So
What'd you say, David?
this is being recorded. So
Oh, this is being recorded, so be careful what you say. Yes. But anyway,
Those
but
are
as a
nice
fellow
words.
educator, Mason, we should catch up. We'll
Yeah,
catch
we
up.
did. I'm mindful of our time, and there's one additional song that I want to share, and this one kind of takes a different lens on this. And this one is it's Ehud Banai, and he's singing about Brooklyn. And I want to sort of play it for you, and sort of that he's describing maybe his perception of what he's seeing in when he comes to Brooklyn, but I think that it's that it has something to do with also this sort of parallel universe to the way that Americans, when they come to Israel and sort of think about Israel. And so I want to kind of plant that seed in your head as if you kind of look at this song, also translated by Rabbi Greengrass, and then the kind of question I want to look at, if we have time at the end, is it what does it mean in our places that we think of home? Is that we don't feel entirely at home in those places, that we feel a little bit at home, but maybe also a little bit foreign in those places, and that can be true, you know, for us personally, and also more, you know, in a macro level. But let me share, and then we'll go from there. Let's see, Brooklyn. All right.
ברוקלין של קודש, ברוקלין של חול, שומע קצת יידיש, no habla español. ברוקלין רב שלמה, הסנה הבוער, ברוקלין לואי, הפחד דוקר. ברוקלין של סוף שחזרה להיות שר, ובכל אל שבת בבית כנסת היא שרה. ברוקלין דיכאון, ברוקלין אושר, ברוקלין פרוצה, ברוקלין גלת כושר. על הדרך לברוקלין אני מתרגש, האם יש בה את מה שליבי מבקש? ברוקלין באופק, על הדרך עשן, הולך בגשם ושר לעצמי שיר ישן. ברוקלין בייבי, בסמלה פרחונית, אני אגיע אלייך כשתעצור לי מונית. ברוקלין נגלת, ברוקלין נסתר, אני לא מכאן, אבל לא ממש זר.
Okay, because we're up against the clock. I think it's a song, right? It repeats, but I'm curious if like what do you see in the context of our conversation around home and this notion of the tensions around multiple homes maybe, and this sort of dual reflection of him talking about Brooklyn, but he's not really talking about Brooklyn. What's your take? What do you think?
That song's heavy on a lot of levels, man.
Yeah.
I'll focus on Brooklyn for just a second. As the child of people, I was born in Brooklyn, moved out of Brooklyn. Parents thought they were creating this great place in central New Jersey, and now I have an older daughter who lives in Brooklyn. And indeed, for her and her generation, the Holy Land. And my father, if he was still alive, and my mother would be turning over in their grave, that what the hell are you doing back in Brooklyn? These are strong connections. They're deep connections. Whether it's Israel or Brooklyn or whatever, they're deep. They're in our DNA, I think, in some way.
Wow. So this is like this notion of home around place, right? The place looms very large, right? Even when the people change, that place still has this root in sort of some sort of magnetic pull, right? And so, any other thoughts about this? Any other takes on the song about Brooklyn or about?
I just touched on this by the fact that a home, or what feels like your home, can be different to different people who share that home. And in fact, some of the people who have that feeling of home in that identified location might not regard you as welcome in their home. Like, how weird is that? Like, it's not, you might think it's your home, but they don't think so. And that is obviously another challenge to home. Yeah.
Right. It's funny how home is, there's the personal and there's the collective, but once you get into the collective, it gets complicated. Yeah. I think there's also this other thing happening in this song where he's sort of mirroring he's talking about Brooklyn, but it all has parallels to the way that Americans, what they see and what they experience when they go to Israel, right? If you think about these, this lyric, on like just, this one line, right? On the way to Brooklyn, I'm excited. Does she have within her what my heart seeks? Brooklyn on the horizon, smoke on the way. I walk in the rain and sing the ancient song to myself, right? Like he's sort of, Brooklyn's almost like the metaphor of an Israeli going to Brooklyn is this weird kind of mirror image of an American coming to Israel. And I think that the key of this whole song is that quote that I pulled out, which I find really powerful for me, which is like, I'm not entirely from here, but I'm not entirely foreign. This idea of like, even when I'm home, I feel like I'm an outsider in the places where I feel home, right? Maybe not in my house, but in those communities. And when I go to Israel, it's my home, but like I struggle with language and I struggle with I'm not Israeli, and I don't, there's lots of things that I know I miss. And when we lived there, like doing basic stuff like paying the bills was just exasperating, right? Like it's not comfortable, it's not home, right? There's parts of it but other parts are not, and that tension, I think, is there's something there. And I'm curious if that's a facet of being Jewish in the world, of being, part of that sort of particularism and universalism, that tension, or if everyone experiences that, right? Like even when you're at home, there's still stuff, and what does it mean in terms of this notion of homeland and having this connection to a place that in this collective way, that even if we've never been there, or if we don't have any people that or any experience that roots us, or that nostalgia for that place, like what is that all about? And as I'm literally watching the time ticking, I really want to know what your thoughts are, and I just want to kind of throw out more of a question that I think that there is something to this notion of Judaism and home and homeland, while at the same time and that tension and that discomfort and that, like, I don't know, I feel like, with the possible exception of Mel and his stuff, I feel like often we've always been trying to make it, to soften the edges around what that means, to make it feel comfortable. And I don't think it's comfortable. I don't think it's ever been comfortable. I don't think it's supposed to be comfortable. I think it's supposed to be tense and dynamic and hard. And, we can do hard things as a people. I see. I'm glad that David granted us. We have a couple more.
Mason's frozen.
Oh, I'll make a little comment while he unfreezes. But my nephew who's in his 30s and wasn't raised Jewish, my brother's son, said to me once, he's very secular. He said to me once, you know, the conflict in Israel and the land and all of that, he goes, it's so uniquely to Israel and he sees the Middle East. People are connected to the land in a way that like the average American isn't. And he was just saying this like he's never been to, you know, he's like in a totally different place. It was so interesting though that he pointed that out to me. And he's like, you know, the average American, like you live here, you live there, but it's not like your land, like that emotional. And that's what makes like, I think the conflict even more of a conflict, you know, that.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Listen, I think that none of us are really young kids on this call. And I think about, you know, you're saying, Mason, about discomfort, supposed to be uncomfortable. That felt really right at 18, even at 23. It doesn't feel so incredibly attractive at the moment. And maybe that's because we've been sitting in our houses for 2 years, I don't know. But this idea of being uncomfortable doesn't resonate the way it did when I was, you know, trying to start a new kibbutz in Israel with young Judea. So. And on that note, my friend, Mason, you want to say a few final words, and then I'm going to send people along their way.
Oh, do I want to say a few final words? Yes. So, sorry, I thought you were going to say a few final words.
I will.
I just want to thank you know, those of you for coming to this session. You know, I was looking at the list of, and I was like, wow, I want to go to those. And so I appreciate you coming here. I hope that you know, like in Ehud Banai, that you found something you were seeking, and I think that I just want to sort of, you know, share this is this sort of Yom Iyyun and really in honor of Mel that I have really you know, very fond memories of Mel, but I think that the strongest ones that I of learning from Mel are really where it was on the basketball court of his just, you know, and this notion, I think, as a teacher that like that being really like it's about something, like that we stand for something, that it wasn't trying, you know, I think that maybe even you know, and I can imagine at times even probably on the almost too much at times, but this idea that like, you know, you got to stand up and you got to believe for something, and like, you know, we can disagree, you can argue with me about it, but like you're going to know exactly where I stand on this, and I think about that a lot when I teach now, and I think about this notion of trying to, like, you know, everyone should feel comfortable, back to this comfort thing, and sometimes I feel like, you know, that in the that there should be empowerment to be able to express yourself and to disagree, but that doesn't necessarily mean you should always feel comfortable. And I had a teacher, Shelley Kadar, once used to say, comfort is not a Jewish value. And you know, I think there's something to that. So, and I agree with you, David, that like being uncomfortable all the time is exhausting.
Mason, thank you so much. I feel more uncomfortable now, and that's all right. I really appreciate this, and it's good to see Jim. I don't know you. It's great to see you, and Miriam and Mary and Karen. Nice to see you guys again. And Mason, thank you so much again. I put in the chat, and you need to go quickly, a link to a Google Doc that has all of the second session, the second block programs that are going on, the Zoom link. So just click that Google Doc, click one of that. You got Hannah Gross from Pinchas Geller, Steve Copeland, if he ever figures out the technology, Ben Dwork, Andrew Fretwell, Alana Proust, Sarah Cohen, Don Futterman, Scott Copeland, and Emil Zeidman. Whew, I'll go to every one of them.
So we're going straight to the second session.
Yeah, go straight, click on that, and then click on the Zoom link, and go there right now, or I'm going to be in trouble.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, Mason. It was great.
Thank you, David.
Just make sure everybody gets where they need to go. Karen, are you good?